Hi, friends. There's something I've been reflecting on lately. What does it really mean to respond, not react, to world events? Because the world feels heavy sometimes, doesn't it? You open the news or scroll on your phone, and it's war, trade disputes, political divisions, economic uncertainty, internal division within our society. I feel like it's so easy to feel overwhelmed or even numb. And that's not what we want. And that's exactly what I wanted to talk to you more about today. Because I think mindfulness isn't just for quiet moments alone. It's also for when we are taking in the world. It helps us choose how we want to show up. So a little background about myself. I was born in Hong Kong and moved to the US when I was 8. And throughout my childhood and even into adulthood, I traveled back and forth between the two countries. So in some ways, I feel like I grew up between two worlds. You could say Hong Kong or China is my birth mother, and the US is my stepmother. And both actually play an important role, I think, in raising and nurturing me into the way who I am. I've seen the work ethics, the family values, and the cultural uniqueness in places like Hong Kong and other parts of China. And I've also experienced and valued the individuality, the openness, and the innovation that shaped the US, the United States. Sometimes I feel like I can understand both sides in a way that makes me feel very grateful to have that such unique experience, between two different cultures, going back and forth. I just make, I feel like it makes it expand my worldviews. But sometimes also a little torn because when I see tensions rise, especially now, whether it's about trade, technology, military, or politics, I see people on both sides reacting with fear, blame, and defensiveness at times. I really understand, at least I try to understand, I do. And I think it's normal that we're human. It's human to react when we feel threatened or misunderstood. But I also wonder, what would happen if more of us pause and responded instead of just jumping in, reacting without awareness? It's like getting caught in a storm without even realizing we're in one. So to me, a reaction is fast. It's emotional. It's based on habit, sometimes pain or even pride. And I think reaction is often involuntary and unconscious, but a response is different. A response comes from awareness. It doesn't mean we stay neutral or do nothing about it, but it means we are choosing from a place of clarity. Clarity. We consciously choose how we want to respond, and that increases the chance for us to see the other sides, to recognize viewpoints that might challenge our own perspective and bias. So when I see something like the US raising tariffs to many countries, but especially toward China, and the start of a trade war filled with retaliation, and then you see new headlines saying one side is negative, one side is manipulative or weak, talking about who's winning, who blinked first, and all that kind of thing. I must admit, sometimes my initial feeling might be like frustration, but I also want to share that with mindfulness, I have a better chance of catching myself. And I think not just me, we all can. When we catch ourselves in that moment, we can take a breath, and then our self-awareness naturally arises and gives us a little space to process all the information around us. It's like in our mind we have this room to step back and ask, hey, like, what's really happening here? Is this about protecting economic interest? Or is it fear of losing status? Or is it a blanket statement that misses all the important details, right? Because underneath every reaction, whether it's a tweet, a headline, or a decision, I think that's usually something more deeper. There are more emotions involved. Could be fear, it could be our history, it could be our ideology, our identity. That's where I think awareness can come in, to slow us down, to help us see beneath the surface. And I think that's very important today. One of the most powerful teachings I have learned from mindfulness is the idea of the middle way. Not being stuck in two extremes, not collapsing into helplessness or just lashing out into anger, but actually finding that space where more clarity, compassion, and strength meet together. So when I was able to apply this teaching into the US-China relationship, I think I have more success in holding both truth. And I realized, yes, there are real differences in systems, in values, in interest, but also we're deeply connected economically, socially, culturally, environmentally, energetically, because at the end of the day, I think it's people working with people. So either we can choose to work together and grow together, or we can choose to work alone and grow apart. But from my perspective, I believe that as we continue to evolve, we're definitely going to become more and more interconnected. Just look at history. History tells us that we are moving, no matter what, if we want to evolve and if we want to advance, we are definitely going to move to become more interconnected. Not just with each other, humans to humans, but with the universe. As we explore outside the earth, as we continue to advance, we're definitely going to get more interconnected in our own pace. Now, I think there may be times when because of how life flows, we might feel like we're growing apart. We might feel like we're walking backward. But like I said, as we continue to move forward, we're going to explore and grow together more and more. And I think the world doesn't need more people picking sides. It actually needs more people willing to think deeply, to respond consciously, to see people, humans, not just governments, not just ideology. So what can we do when we feel overwhelmed by world events? I can share with one example. Not long ago, I saw a piece of content from a guest who said, oh, we should tariff all Chinese goods at 400%, 500%. He was claiming that China steals intellectual property, doesn't respect small businesses in the US, that they all cheat, and he just went off with everything. So my first instinct was, frustration, like, oh, okay, here we go again. Somebody claiming all that. But there was this inner shift. I noticed, the key with mindfulness is you notice, the subtleness or the nuances, even within yourself. So I honestly credit this, I guess, transcendence or this higher level of consciousness with the practice of meditation and mindfulness. I wasn't caught up with my own bias or defensive mode, because when I created that little space for myself, I was able to consciously choose how I wanted to respond. I didn't just react, I witnessed not just the information, but I witnessed myself. And once I noticed, with calm, with compassion, and more clarity, my mental self started asking better questions, like more balanced questions. Yes, I believe there may be some truth to what he was saying, but it was also a blanket statement. It was playing into fear and the emotions of people who are already feeling nationalistic. To say that all Chinese companies cheat or don't respect others, I was asking, okay, what are the actual facts? Where's the proof? What's the percentage compared to the total business that happens through US and China partnerships? Now, how about we look inward too? Are we truly holding the moral high ground, or are we speaking in a way that feels condescending? I think it's so easy to attract clicks and build a headline like that, but what's the purpose? Because that kind of content is not giving the world the energy it actually needs. I don't want to be part of that game. I really want to foster interconnectedness, healthy relationship. And I was asking, if most Chinese companies were truly cheating, then why do so many small businesses in the US choose to collaborate with Chinese manufacturers continuously? Why do so many also find success together? After all, nobody will run a business forever when it's not profitable. There must be mutual success there, isn't it? So I think when we pause, when we create that space with the practice of mindfulness and meditation, it allows us to not drown into those negative emotions and reactions. It allows more space so that our mental self can come forth and think deeper. We don't need to think just on the surface. It's so easy to grab headlines with surface thinking. But in order to really make progress, we need to think deeper. Mentally, we need to think deeper. And emotionally, we need to expand ourselves. So we can honestly, and I can honestly believe that's what will help us move forward to a better outcomes is through mindfulness, is through understanding, mutual understanding. I truly believe that. So my experience is this. It does take us out of our comfort zone a little bit. Sometimes it might feel a lot too, to pause and not react. It does take us out of our comfort zone because we're so conditioned to just react. A negative piece of content, we react because we choose to just listen to our own bias or our own tendency. And we have no problem doing that because it's so easy to find information right now in the days of the internet to just simply to just only consume and listen to content that already play into our own bias and tendency. But it takes a lot more strength to seek out, to listen different point of views. I truly believe that. So I think, like I said, what helps to transcend that moment when we really want to react more gracefully is not to avoid the pain, but to meet it with presence. I bring my awareness to my breath, just like now I practice with you. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Simply bring your awareness in through my nose or out through my nose. So it's soft and natural. Try that a few times. When you notice you are, triggered with a piece of content, try that. That will create a space for you. So, and you will find that this pause give you just enough space to discover the best way to respond. And sometimes I place my hand on my lap like this and breathe into my dantian. Dantian is just a few inches beneath our navel, our belly button, and a little inward. So breathe into that. And I feel the energy gathering into that space. And some say it's the source of our internal power. And I just let the breath to settle there. Okay, I'll breathe a few times with you right now. So by doing that, it brings me back to a grounded place, away from reactivity And from that space, many times I realized I wasn't pulled by the news anymore. And I can consciously choose to respond and not respond at all. I mean, because hey, not everything needs a response. There's so many things we can agree or disagree on, but if we feel like we have to react to everything, we end up wasting so much time and energy. The truth is, I think we cannot control the world. We can't always change what's happening out there, but we can choose how we engage with it. Uh, Whether we want to add more fire or more light is our choice. So the next time, if you feel you're pulled into a reaction from the news, a post, or someone's comment, try pause. Notice, just like right now, I notice the birds, and I can just embrace that and observe that, because there's so many things happening that we just neglect, and they're so beautiful. We should really take a moment to pause and use those as practices so that next time when you're triggered with a piece of content that you disagree, you can choose how you want to react, or you can choose how you want to respond. And we can ask ourselves, what would a conscious response feel like instead? Maybe that response is a breath. Maybe it's choosing not to add more noise. Even when you do choose to respond, I have found that coming from awareness and not needing to win the argument, it actually brings way more peace of mind, because you're not expecting an answer that has to validate your point of view. You're allowing yourself to go with the flow. Each moment we choose to respond with presence, we raise the vibration of energy, not just for ourselves, but for the world around us. So thank you for exploring this with me. I love to hear your thoughts. How do you stay grounded when facing global tension or conflict? Let's keep walking this path together. See you next time.